The Tears of Gaia by Redback Spino. Chapter 12. Antlers and Beaks. A cloudy gray sky hung above the land as the column of blightlings dog-trotted over hills and plains. The day was coming to an end, and exhaustion was beginning to set in the muscle of the 30 or so troops. But they stubbornly carried on, running as if the whips of their masters were behind them. All except for the 3 unfortunate ponies, who staggered and stumbled otherwards, yanked along by heavy iron chains around their necks. Albazak silently trotted ahead of the 3, with Rainbow Dash right behind her, switching occasionally from running to hovering a foot or so above the ground, then returning back to running to give her wings a rest. But Fluttershy staggered and stumbled forwards at the back, practically being dragged by the blighting captor, who held her chained in his claws. Bruised, battered, and scratched all over, Fluttershy whimpered to herself. She began to revisit bygone days when she and her friends would go off on adventures, traveling all around Equestria and the neighboring lands, helping ponies out, seeing all kinds of amazing sights, and battling the occasional evildoer. Return of Nightmare Moon, confronting the Dragon of the Smoky Mountains, the conflict in Appaloosa, Discord's return, the Royal Winding, traveling to the Changeling Kingdom to save the 3 fillies. Oh, we're putting in comic book continuity. Bravo. All were times that she and her friends were in very real mortal peril. At any time things could have gone wrong, and oftentimes it did. But her friends were always there to get her back on her hooves and help her strive forward. But now it was just Rainbow and Applejack with her, and neither of them was in any state to comfort her or to help her back on her hooves. For the first time since she had met all her friends, all those years ago when Twilight Sparkle first moved to Ponyville, Fluttershy felt truly alone and vulnerable, and it was terrifying. She gazed desperately around her, as if willing somebody to spring out from behind a rock or out of a hole in the ground and come to their aid. But all she saw was empty plains, dotted with the occasional rocky outcrop or grove of trees. Off in the distance in front of them, she could just see a faint shape on the horizon. Blinking her prairie eyes, they gave it to focus as what to be appeared a massive forest, somehow growing in the middle of this wasteland. Even as he pondered how much a massive forest could suddenly spring up in the middle of these plains, something darted past her out of the corner of her eye. Looking straight to the column of blightlings and pony captives, she saw it again. The silhouette of something, slender and lithe, peeking up from behind a nearby boulder. But in the blink of an eye it was gone, only to peek up from behind another boulder, slightly closer to the trotting column, but still too far to make out clearly. Don't say anything. Don't even react. Pretend you can't hear me. Fluttershy startled ever so slightly as she suddenly heard this voice speaking inside her head. A quick tug on the chain around her neck got her moving again. But while she was pulled along, she still heard the voice in her mind. It was a voice she did not recognize, wispy and gentle, comforting and yet commanding at the same time. Eager to reply, she thought of a moment, trying her hardest to communicate to this mysterious voice that she understood. I cannot help you and your friends just yet, but I promise that I will. I am Yarrow, of the Office of the Servatus. What's your name?
Fluttershy,
She thought back, hoping that she was only thinking this and not actually saying this out loud.
my name is Fluttershy.
That's a pretty name. The voice replied, making Fluttershy blush slightly. I wish I could help you and your friends sooner, but I'm the only one of my kind out this far. When these monsters venture closer to our territory, we can aid you in your force. Do you know where they are taking you? Fluttershy replied,
I'm not sure, but they are saying they're heading to a place called Mudhole. They say it's an outpost or fort of some kind.
Well, that's certainly convenient. I've heard of that place. It's a fairly new outpost right near the border of our land. Did you see that large forest up ahead? Fluttershy craned her neck and looked over the head of the column. Far in the distance, she could see on the horizon a small black shape, like a small castle. She assumed that must be Mudhole. But just to the right was a forest of immense forest of tall trees of every kind. It stretched off to the distance, some trees appearing to be almost 100 feet tall. That is where I'm from, the voice of Yara continued. The forest of the kingdom of Servatus, homeland of the Yaras, and its capital of Ostrar. For the first time in several days, Fluttershy felt her heart warming.
You live in a forest? That's wonderful. What kind of animals are there?
No time for idle chat, I'm afraid, Yara replied. I have to get back to my people now, Fluttershy. I won't be able to speak to you anymore, but I'll be watching these monsters on their way to the fort. Even if you can't see me, I'll be there.
But where are you?
Fluttershy glanced around deftly, so as not to draw the attention of the blightlings.
I can't see you anywhere.
Look to your right, to the 2 boulders on the right of the column. She checked the blight lights immediately around her, seeing they were all looking straight ahead. Fluttershy turned to see the boulders on her right, and could see the mysterious figure slightly clearer for the briefest of moments. At first she thought it was some kind of pony peeking up from behind the boulder, but she had never seen a pony like this before. First of all, it had a very different build to any pony she'd seen, with a rather bulky body supported by unusually slender limbs, and a thinner head that appeared to be a white muzzle, tipped with a small black nose, and a pair of almond-shaped eyes that stared back at her. It also had a rather strange fur pattern beneath the green and brown tunic it wore. It also seemed to be mostly a deep chestnut brown, mottled with white spots on the back, and a lighter brown on its underside. However, most unusual were the horns, like two branches of forest wood, with spire from its head. She silently stared at the creature, who simply stared back, smiling intently at Fluttershy. He then raised a cloven hoof to his mouth, as if huzzing the Pegasus. "I'm leaving you now. Once you and your friends reach the fort, I will return with my friends and will rescue you. Until then, just do what these monsters say, and keep your head down. And don't forget, Fluttershy, I'm your friend." With that, the strange creature named Yarrow was gone. Not with some bright flash like a unicorn's teleport spell, or even the familiar whoosh of a creature hurrying away. As if she was blinked for the slightest nanosecond, and Yarrow was gone. Her thoughts on this most peculiar creature were interrupted, however, as there came a twinge of pain in her left forehead as she studded against a rock. Wobbling for a moment, the chain around her neck yanked her forwards, and her legs gave way beneath. She fell to the ground with a squeak. Behind her, she could hear several blightlings trying their best to skid to a halt, before tripping over her splayed legs and collapsing onto a heap on top of her. Fluttershy gasped for breath as more and more soldiers piled on top and around her. "Oof, get off of me! Hey, there's someone on my claws with my nose! Somebody's got their nose on my claws! Hey, what do you do that for, Sir Ospreys? You weigh a ton! Shut up, you're no featherweight yourself! Hey, what's going on back there?" Before a brawl could break out, however, Molgoth was on the scene, digging his way through the heap of blightlings and shoving them aside. Finally, he hoisted the last soldier on the back of his hoof, leaving only Fluttershy, lying almost flat on the ground. "You!" He crouched low until he was snout to snout with the poor Pegasus, glaring into her eyes, black smoke billowing from his mouth into her face. "You're the troublemaker. I gotta say, that's rather surprising. I expected out of either one of your troublesome little friends, but they're both behaving themselves up ahead of you. What's your problem, then?" Fluttershy almost blurted out the mysterious conversations she had in her head with this mysterious Yarrow. But she checked herself and swiftly came up with an excuse.
Well, I was looking up at the sky. Thought I saw a bird or something flying above us. I guess I was distracted and I tripped and fell, and then they all started falling all over me."
Molgoth looked up at the empty cloudless sky above them and snorted. "Well, there's no birds up there now. If there were, I said to one of my flying critters up there to fetch us some dinner." Laga came to join off Molgoth. A thin, wispy branch held in his magical grip. "Normally I have you whipped for interrupting the line and causing a ruckus like this. Consider yourself lucky we're on a tight schedule to get to Mudhole as fast as possible. Now, get back in line and move it!" Fluttershy squeaked in fright as the blighting captain raised his voice, quickly got to her feet, trying along as the column started moving again. "Besides," Molgoth muttering, his black smoke licking her ear, "we'll have plenty of time to tenderize you when we get to the fort." He leered at her one more time, before hurrying up to the front of the column. She watched him go with wide, fearful eyes, before turning her gaze back to the fort up ahead, and the massive forest that stood behind it. Pinkie Pie's keen sense of smell and natural attraction to baked goods did not fail them. In a matter of minutes, the 4 ponies were on the 4th layer of Phthia, seated at a wooden table outside a small bakery, from inside of which wafted the scents of freshly baked pastries, spices, and all manner of other savory and sweet delicacies. It was a simple establishment, a stone building with an open front, through which orders were made to the kitchen inside, and passed out to waiters clad in white aprons, who served to them to a small crowd of griffins outside. Most were diners who were seated at one of the 4 long trusted tables that stretched out in front of the bakery, though those who could not find room to sit simply stood at the sides, some even perched along the walls or the roof of the bakery itself, with the waiters flying up to them with their orders. It had a chaotic air about the place, but the staff maintained order among their patrons well enough, and an air of good cheer reigned over all. Twilight, Pinkie Pie, Verity, and Star Swirl were seated at one of these long tables, squeezed in between them and between the other diners on the other side. The four ponies shared a platter of savory dumplings fresh off the boiling pot, as well as a basket of bread rolls.
Mmm.
I must say, Rarity said, as heavily as these dumplings sit in one's stomach, I can't deny that they taste amazing. I guess we're just used to dumplings that are fried instead of boiled, Twilight replied through her mouthful of dough. They are good, though. These rolls aren't that bad either.
Aren't bad? They're the yummiest things I had in my tummy for a while. I gotta go ask them about the recipe before we leave.
A griffin in a white apron stopped as he passed the four ponies, carrying a tray laden with glasses of fruit punch. So, how are you four enjoying the food? He asked as he handed a glass to each pony. Twilight took a sip from her drink.
It's delicious, thanks.
After the time we've had, a good meal like this is just what we needed. If you don't mind me asking, what exactly are four ponies doing this far out here? You four have the look of equestrian ponies, and we hardly ever get your type around here. The griffin waiter asked. Twilight replied, Well, we were out, on a cross-country trip with some other friends, and we tossed them out there somewhere. We've lost them. We were hoping to make an appeal to the royal court here, for aid in finding our friends. Sarasor continued. The griffin frowned. Well, I hope for you and your friends' sakes that someone on the council can help you. You don't want to get lost out in these parts.
Actually,
Twilight interrupted.
What exactly are these parts? We're, well, kind of lost ourselves.
Lost as well? The griffin raised an eyebrow. Well, in terms of Equestria, we're pretty far southwest of here. We're just south of the San Palemo Desert, which is on the equestrian border, I think. There's a lot of empty land out there to get lost in, I'm afraid. And some pretty nasty creatures roaming around. Yeah, we know, Twilight said, the thoughts of her missing friends weighing heavily on her mind and heart. The waiter noticed the sun changed to the unicorn's expressive, and swiftly changed the subject. Listen, I gotta get back to work. But don't worry, King Gideon's got contacts all around these parts. If any bird can help you, it's the council. Thanks, Twilight replied with an appreciative smile. The griffin nodded and returned to the shop front to pick up another order of food. Rarity swallowed another mouthful of dumpling and dabbed her lips with a napkin.
Well, it's at least comforting to know exactly where we are, though I've never been this far from Equestria before.
Indeed, Sarzo replied. I keep an eye out for some place in this town that sells maps, my dear Twilight. I did not ever think to make a map of this journey. Twilight nodded. Sure, but it only covers Equestria and the southern lands. We're way off map.
It's heavy explorers, lost in a faraway land.
Pinkie piped up, waving a hover in dramatic land.
If Rainbow Dash was here, I bet she'd make some reference to Daring Do.
Twilight Rarity chuckled. Yeah, I bet she would. Twilight trailed off. Pinkie reached across the table and placed a comforting hoof on her shoulder.
Oh, don't worry, Twilight. Rainbow Dash and Applejack are two of the toughest ponies I know, and I know a lot of tough ponies. I'm sure they're fine. But what about Fluttershy? She's hardly a hardened traveler or athlete like the others.
Rarity responded. I don't know. She might not look it, but Fluttershy's a lot tougher than she first appears. Just remember that whole incident with the dragon. Twilight added. Rarity and Pinkie Pie both nodded as they reminisced about that day. Sarasor watched the grins growing on their faces with some confusion, before turning to Twilight. Before she could explain, there was a booming toll of a massive bell, echoing down throughout the town, from a tall tower by the keep.
What's that all about?
Pinkie asked the griffin who sat beside her. That would be the signal of sunset, he replied. I cannot help but overhear what your four Rasa are making it appear to the court. You better hurry up to keep up then. It'll be starting in 5 minutes. Twilight and her friends hastily left a small pile of coins on their empty platter, shouldered their shadow bags, and hurried through the streets towards the keep. Just as they reached the top tier of the mountainside, Starswirl shouted out to the two guards who were beginning to close the massive door. Halt! Let us through! We have counsel with the royal court. The armored griffins looked up as they heard his voice, quickly yanking the doors to hold their closing. The four ponies reached the doors with barely a second to spare. Now they quite thanks as they passed between the doors to the keep. You're just in time, my pony visitors. Before them stood another Galahad, the young griffin who greeted them at the keep earlier today. He was still clad in the same velvet coat, but he discarded the fur cloak and now wore a simple bronze circlet across his brow. The young griffin smelled out. Come on in, though. The court is about to begin. You're lucky Today we don't have many appeals apart from yours. The four ponies followed Galahad down a short corridor to the keep, until they came out to another door before them, as the corridor balanced out to the right. I'm going this way to join the other members of the council, but you ponies can go in and take a seat now with the others. See you in there. With one last smile, he headed down the corridor and out of sight, leaving the four ponies standing before the door. Starshield took an audible deep breath. Well, I suppose this is it. Sorry. The three mayors nodded as Starshield pushed the door open. All four ponies gasped as the royal court was revealed to them. Greeting them was an enormous, tall room, packed to the rafters with griffins of all breeds, sizes, and colors. It was less like a council room or a court, and more akin to an arena in design. On either side of the entrance, there stood rows and rows of large flat cushions arranged like a ramp, almost like the bleachers of a racetrack or hoofball game. At the base of these seats, in the front of the large space in the center of the court, there was a red carpet that stretched from the cart room, dotted with another row of cushions, upon which several griffins were already seated. And at the far end of the space, raised up on another platform, were 5 stone seats arranged in a row. The seats on either end were simply carved from black granite. The 3 seats between them were more ornate, carved instead of white marble. But in the middle of the throne was the most intricately detailed of them all, carved with pairs of swirls and strange runes. As the 4 ponies sat down, Twilight muttered to the griffin beside him, "So, who's exactly on the council?" The griffin pointed towards the thrones.
Well, King Gideon presides over the whole thing. Then on his left and right are his aides, Councilors Galahad and Commander Gallant. And then there's an on the right, Glinda, and over on Galahad's left.
What about that last seat? Who sits there? Rarity asked. I noticed there's already a crown on that seat.
The 4 ponies followed her pointing hoof and saw that, indeed, that seat sat farthest on the right had a small iron circlet resting on its cushion. But before the griffin replied, there came an "All rise!" from one of the guards, who shouldered his musket and opened a door on the side. Through the council entered. The 4 ponies hastily stood up with the rest of the griffins. First came an elderly female griffin, no doubt Glinda, dressed in a simple gray tunic and silver trim, and an iron circle around her brow. Then came Gellert, no longer clad in his dark armor, but instead in a red and gold dressed military jacket, not unlike the one Shining Armor wore during the royal wedding. Even without the bulky armor, Gellert was an imposing figure, towering over everyone present. Around his head he wore a bronze circlet. Lastly they came Galahad, dressed in his velvet jacket, but now with a silver circle around his brow. He gave a quick smile to the 4 ponies as he sat down on his white marble floor.
All bow for His Majesty Gideon, Lord and King of Fahir.
The griffins shouted. Stooping low, the door on the left of the courtroom swung open. Suddenly, every creature in the courtroom fell silent, and every head was bowed. The ponies quickly followed suit, but not one of the 4 friends could resist raising their heads ever so slightly to get a good look as King Gideon entered. The floor was shaking with every footfall. In stepped the largest griffin any of the ponies ever seen. He was several heads taller than any other griffin and pony present, almost as large as a manticore. His hind quarters were those of an enormous lion, the top of the tail ragged and untidy, and beginning to gray, much like the rest of his fur. But beneath his graying fur could be seen the shapes of enormous bulging muscles and sinews, all along his legs and barrel chest. His clawed forelimbs were just as enormous and muscular, terminating in hands that looked like they could crush whole skulls in a grip. In one hand he carried a strange sort of mace, terminating in a head that only looked like a spike on one side, almost looking like a simple imitation of a bird's skull. His head was that of an enormous golden eagle, with fishish hooked beak and yellow eyes. Around his heavy brow was a circle of gold, with a ruby set into the center. At one time, Gideon must have looked like the most powerful griffin in existence, but Twilight could not help but notice how he limped exhaustedly to his marble throne, how heavily he seated himself down, and how vacant and blurry his yellow eyes seemed to be, how distant his stare. The red and gold jacket he wore, with a longer trim and more ornately decorated than Gellert's, seemed faded and shabby. He seemed to lean entirely on his mace like a walking stick, resting his chin upon it as he sat forward on his throne. Even with his imposing build, Twilight could not help but think he looked kind of pathetic.
The royal court is now called to order. You may now be seated,
boomed Gellert's voice. The assembled griffins all sat down, and the ponies followed suit, and the council began. The other griffins had presented their appeals and cases to the 4 griffins, who would then each give their opinion on the matter, except for Gideon, who remained silent. 3 griffins would then give a vote of Jahit or Nitit on the matter, and move on to the next. Most of the appeals were a very simple matter. One griffin was asking for permission to build an extension to his house to house his growing family. The name was Jahit. The next was a land dispute between the 2 small families, with the accuser claiming that the other family had extended his festival garden onto his property without asking permission. Jahit in favor of the accuser. The third appeal was for aid in searching for a pair of young griffins who had gotten lost in the mountains. Another unanimous Jahit, though Geller took some convincing that he had enough truth to spare. Well, this is promising, Starswell muttered to Twilight out of the corner of his mouth. They've said aye to every single appeal so far. That last appeal about the search party is especially encouraging.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Here's hoping, I guess. Twilight replied. Geller turned to face him, beckoning him forward. The last petition of the evening. The royal court calls forward the 4 pony visitors from Equestria. The mention of the ponies sent a ripple of muttering throughout the court, as all eyes turned to the 4 ponies. Twilight hesitated, but with a quick nudge, Starswell stood up beside her. She smiled at him, beckoned for Rarity and Pinky to stand as well. Together, the 3 mares and 1 stallion took their place in the center of the court, looking up to the 4 griffins seen before them. Order, please, said Galahad, and the group fell silent once more. Ponies of Equestria, please state your names and the manner of your appeal, please. Twilight nodded and nervously cleared her throat.
Ahem. My name is Twilight Sparkle, sirs, and these 2 are my friends, Pinkie Pie and Rarity. We are ponies from the town of Ponyville. Though I was originally from Canterlot, that's the capital of Equestria, but I moved to Ponyville. She trailed off under the influencing glare of the 4 griffins. Anyway, this is Starswell the Bearded, who is,
Twilight trailed off again, glancing desperately at her friends.
They never come up with any sort of cover story for Starswell. What do I say?
Twilight thought to herself.
What can I say? He's the greatest wizard in history, brought back from the dead.
I am her tutor, sirs, Starswell enchanted swiftly. Since you moved out of Canterlot, I have been her magical tutor in Ponyville.
He gave a stealthy wink in Twilight's direction. The young unicorn nodded.
Anyway, sirs, we've been traveling around Equestria, my friends and I. But we also had 3 others with us, our friends.
And why are you traveling together?
Glinda asked.
It was purely academic,
Starswell quickly replied, part of Twilight's magical training.
Like a field trip,
Pinkie Pie added. Geller glared at Pinkie.
Well, I can understand why you 3 unicorns would be on this field trip. But what about the others? Why are they unicorns as well?
No, sir, Twilight replied nervously. Pinkie Pie and 1 other, Applejack, are other Earth ponies, and the other 2, Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy, are Pegasi.
Well, then why would they come as well?
Geller asked, an eyebrow raised. Rarity responded.
Well, if you saw an excuse to go on a trip all around Equestria with a group of your friends, would you not take it?
There was a general murmur of agreement from the griffins in the stands, as well as the council members.
That does sound nice, I can't deny, Galahad added.
Oh, nice country up there in Equestria, that's true,
added Gilda.
Hold on! Geller stood up. If you and your companions were traveling around Equestria, then how did you end up so far south of its borders?
Galahad stood as well.
Now hold on, every bird! How about we save these questions for after these ponies finish their account?
Geller hesitated, but begrudgingly sat down. Galahad did the same.
Continue, please.
Twilight nodded. Thank you. Anyway, the 7 of us were traveling together when we were attacked by these creatures.
And what sort of creatures? Some sort of beast or Gelhart? Continue, Gellert muttered.
These creatures, they were like us, ponies or griffins, but different.
Twilight attempted to describe the blightling creatures that had tormented them. There was another murmur throughout the courtroom, this time more nervous and uncertain.
So, they looked like us. What else?
Galahad added. Twilight gulped.
Well, they had faded fur or feathers. I think several had scales as well. And some of them wore tattered cloaks of some kind. And their eyes completely black, except for their irises, which were
yellow.
Twilight was taken aback by Galahad's interruption.
Yes, that's it. Apparently they called themselves the Blight, and they kidnapped 3 of my friends!
The murmurs in the courtroom were swelled to a panic tearing. At the mention of the Blight, a change seemed to come over King Gideon as well. He raised his heavy head, and for the first time, his eyes seemed to look at the ponies before him. Was it a trick of the light, or was that a tear in his eye? Twilight looked to her friends, worried that she may have said the wrong thing.
Order! We will have order!
Gellert boomed, and the room quickly fell silent again. Gallus stood up.
We've had encounters with these monsters before. They appeared in our lands a couple of years ago. They roamed unchallenged and are indiscriminate in whom they attack. We still don't know their ultimate motives, but they seem to be determined to spread their plague to as many creatures as they can.
And they have our friends! Piggy cried. We need your help to find them and get them back!
As much as I'd like to say yes, ponies, I'm not sure we can, Gallus replied.
But why not?
Because, how can I put this delicately? The young griffin scratched his chin as he searched for the right words. Because, if your friends have been taken by the blight, they are probably dead or already one of them. The four ponies' eyes grew wide with shock, and breath caught in their throats. God threw a dirty look at Gallus' direction. Well, yes, I would have phrased it a little less brutally, but that is the truth. We had no account of a griffin being captured by the blight, who was either killed or on sight or turned into a blightling himself.
Can't they do that? Turning you into one of them?
Rarity asked, half not even wanting to hear the answer. Galahad nodded.
We have seen it happen to many of our old people. They strike their victim's mind bare and empty, filling instead with their evil plague. It poisons their mind and warps their body, until there's barely anything left of their previous selves. No memories, no allegiance to anything but the blight, and no desires but except to spread the blight further.
Twilight felt the blood draining from her face as she heard more and more.
So the blight can convert their prisoners and make them into blightlings as well? What's to say they've not already done that to Rainbow, Applejack, and Fluttershy?
A tiny glint of light inside her caught her attention. Rifling through the bag a bit, she found what was the source of the class on a small lacquered box. The box that contained the tears.
The tears, of course!
Suddenly it hit her.
Returning a creature to blight erases their mind and memory. They don't waste any memory they had that they were traveling at all. My friends would completely forget the tears existed. Sirs?
Twilight shouted over the hubbub that had broken out the courtroom.
Please listen!
Order! Order, I say!
Gellert roared over the cacophony to no avail. Finally fed up, he puffed out his chest, opened his beak, and let out a long, deafening In an instant, the entire courtroom was silent again. Every griffin and pony immediately cowed.
Phew. Thank you, Gellert,
Gellert finally said. Now, Twilight, do you have anything more to say before we put it to vote? Twilight looked anxiously to the others, who all looked expectantly back.
If you have anything more
to add, I suggest we do so. We need all the help we can get, Starswell muttered. Twilight nodded and turned back to the council members.
Yes, I do have something to say. I know my three friends have been kidnapped by the blight. However, I have reason to believe they are still fine and neither been killed nor turned to the blight themselves.
Oh,
Galahad's eyes widened.
that reason would be...
Twilight gulped.
No turning back now, because we have something with us. It's something that the blight want for themselves.
And what would this be?
Gellert asked, his curiosity piqued. Twilight paused, just as she held the box in her magical grip. She found herself hesitant to reveal the tears of these griffins.
Just how much can we trust them? What would you think of something like the tears? Would they want it for themselves?
She felt a hoof on her shoulder, and looked to see Starswell, Pinky, and Rarity all looking at her, with encouragement in their eyes.
I think it's time we told them the truth,
Rarity said. Twilight smiled at them, and her horn glowed. She sifted the lacquered box out of the bag and sent it hovering toward the four griffins seated before her. Undoing the clasp, she pulled the lid back and revealed the tiny emerald within. This is the Tears of Gaia. It contains the concentrated magic of 6 of the most powerful beings in existence. It is one of the most powerful magic reservoirs in all of Equestria, and maybe even beyond. And the blight want it for their own.